Here we go!
With Mario Kart DS hitting the big 2-0 recently, I thought it'd be a fun idea to go back and look at the track roster for the game and see just how far we've come. And holy shit, these do not hold up. There's definitely a couple bangers here and there, but so much of this roster is just like, how did I enjoy these as a kid? So yeah, we're going to rank all the tracks here. We're going to see which ones are the best, which ones are the worst, and just have a nice and civil discussion as befits a friendly community that is the Mario Kart fandom. Starting us off at the F tier, to no one's surprise, is Choco Island 2, and I just don't know where to begin with this one. Even before the race even starts, this thing looks like hot ass. And I mean that literally. I don't get how there are two different chocolate themed tracks in this game, and one of them looks as bad as it does, but if we're being honest, that is the least of this track's problems. For some reason, the whole track is littered with these ramps, and I have spent years trying to find out what the point of these even are. Even on the original track, these things barely had any purpose. But here, they're just more of a nuisance than anything else. You barely touch one of these things, and you go flying. The only other thing of note here is the giant puddle of mud in the middle of the track that everyone seems to hate. But if I'm being honest, I don't really mind it. It fits the theming much better than the ramps, and is far less intrusive, so it gets a pass from me. What doesn't get a pass from me is the reduced lap counter. Now this is a problem that plagues all the SNES tracks, so I won't be too harsh on it, because I mean like, we only have to spend 3 laps on Choco Island 2. If anything, they're doing us a favour, right? Yeah, no, the track still sucks. Luigi Circuit is quite possibly the best opening course in all of Mario Kart, sacrificing a complex layout in favour of showing off the game's chaotic nature by having a single straightaway where players drive both up and down, going head to head at all different parts of the track. But that's the original version, because this remake sucks. And it's not even anything to do with the track itself, because it's pretty much unchanged from its original rendition. It doesn't work in this game because of how tame it is in comparison to Double Dash. In that game, everyone was more clustered together with far more chaotic items. But here, the track's just far too wide, and with the items nowhere near as chaotic as it was before, races here are just kind of boring. And that fact isn't helped by the fact that this is one of 4 starter courses in the game. Speaking of which, Figure 8 Circuit is one of the worst starter courses in the series. There's nothing I can say about this one that hasn't been said already. It honestly feels like they just took a tech demo and threw it in the full game, because there is nothing of substance in this one. Which is a crying shame, because it did not have to be this way. Such a simple idea that I had was to make this a sort of, like, Demolition Derby Figure 8 type track, kind of like that one scene in Cars 3. Have one set of items clustered in the middle, shrink the track down, and make it 5 laps long or something. Something as simple as that could have turned this track into the next Baby Park, but instead we ended up with what could quite possibly be the most uninspired track in all of Mario Kart. Or maybe that's how it goes to Donut Plains 1, I don't know. I gotta give credit where it's due, because they really nailed the Plains part of the name here. Because it honestly feels like there's less to talk about here than there was with Figure 8 Circuit. Genuinely, the only thing of note here is how they fucked up on the final turn. Initially, this gravel section served as a sort of ice path, so you could either take the turn wide and play it safe, or you could take it tighter and risk going off the side of the track. But that's not how it is in this version. It's just another generic off-road now, meaning that the only semblance of anything interesting this track once had is now gone. Also, there's a bridge. Spoilers when I eventually rank the Super Circuit tracks, but Bowser Castle 2 is easily my least favourite one of the bunch. So isn't it great that they chose to bring this back over any other Bowser Castle? This one's honestly just pathetic. The whole thing's filled to the brim with ramps much like Choco Island 2, and also much like Choco Island 2, they serve zero purpose. They do have fireballs that jump out of the lava that could have served as a decent enough obstacle, but there's only one jump that's even worth taking, and it's one of the few that doesn't have a fireball. Honestly, if it was in any other Mario Kart after this one, I don't think it would be nearly as bad. But with this being the last game without a trick system, it is painfully obvious how pointless these ramps are. And as if that wasn't bad enough, the music sucks. A shame really, because this track has one of my favourite bits of music in the entire series, but you wouldn't have guessed it from this one now, would you? Anyway, that's all there is for the F tiers. I don't want to talk about these ones again, but I know I'm gonna have to eventually. Moving on to the D tier though, it's quite possibly the most divisive track in all of Mario Kart, Baby Park. There's no middle ground when it comes to this one. Either you're super bass and you think it's just kinda funny, or you're cringe and you think it's the most boring thing ever made. Fortunately, this version is kind of the most boring thing ever made. It mainly just suffers from the same things Luigi Circuit does. The track hasn't changed in the slightest, but As I said again, this game just isn't nearly as chaotic in nature as Double Dash. Tamer items, a wider track, slower karts, and an inexplicably reduced lap count all come together to make a track that is nothing but an empty husk of what it once used to be. As cool as it is to see the first ever Mario Kart track come back and introduce retro tracks, I'm not the biggest lover of this one. Much like the rest of the SNES tracks in the game, the visuals are pretty bland here, and also like those other SNES tracks, the reduced lap count is not doing it any favours. This one just feels kinda empty. Like, I get that it's a starter track, and credit where it's due, it does have more going on than Figure 8 does. But outside of the pipes at the last turn, there's just not really much going for this one. It's just your typical run-of-the-mill flat circuit track. Which, come to think of it, about a third of the track roster is just flat tracks anyway, so I guess it did its job. Banshee Boardwalk was so close to being put in F tier, but if I'm being honest, there are a couple things going for this one. Well, like, one thing. There's one thing going for this one. It's really just this random giant concrete block in the middle of the track. There's a couple U-turns and a few bats flying at you. There's nothing all too special about it, but I just think it's kinda cute. Shame about the rest of the track though. Yeah, this one's just kinda pathetic. For a track that started off in this special cup and then ended up in the lightning cup, this thing is far too easy. Pretty much every single turn has a barrier either on the inside or the outside, so you are never flying off. Outside of that, there's just really nothing else to talk about here. Although, scratch that, there is this fish.
Just woke up in a fucking steaming mood, yeah? Because I live in a shithole! Do you know what I mean? Birmingham is a fucking shithole! I hate the fucking place!
Desert Hills is one of the few tracks in this game that are based on actual Mario levels, and is pretty much unanimously agreed upon to be the weakest of the bunch. Based on Desert Hill from Mario Bros. 3, this one doesn't really do anything all too fancy to deviate from other desert tracks outside of, I guess, a few pipes at the start. The main thing this one has going for it are its use of enemies. You've got the typical boring pokies at this one area, but there's also the angry sun that flies around the track shooting fire snakes at you. And while that's all well and good, it is also the only thing of note here. The layout here is just beyond boring. Genuinely, the only thing worth mentioning is this part at the end of the track where the turns to the item boxes on the outside to try and mess with the optimal racing line. But that's about it. And when you look at all the desert tracks lined up, this could very well be the single most forgettable in all of the series. Peach Circuit gets the award of being the best opening course in Mario Kart DS. I honestly don't really have anything to say about this one. Figure 8 Circuit was just a pile of wasted potential. Mario Circuit 1 was the first track ever made. Luigi Circuit GameCube just didn't age well. But this one? I've got nothing. I mean, the music's good, but there's another track I'd much rather play to hear it. The layout's kinda whatever. It's easily the best of the four, but again, there's not really a hard bar to cross. There's just nothing to talk about here. I mean, they kept the part where they extended the road so you don't fly off the track, although you're never gonna go here unwillingly with how tight the controls are now. That's worth talking about, right? I don't know, I'd rather not spend the rest of my day trying to think of things to discuss about Peach Circuit, so let's just move on. Moo Moo Farm is back from the N64, and it is just as okay as it was back then. I don't really have an opinion on this one. It's kinda just here, and that's about it. Music-wise, it's pretty solid. Layout-wise, it's just an oval. But visually, I do like the parts with the Monty Melts on the insides to make a little bit of risk and reward, but they don't take up nearly as much space as they did on the original, and it's much easier to avoid, so any praise they would have gotten is immediately thrown out the window. And that's really all I have to say about this one. There's just nothing much to discuss, but let's be real, you didn't come here for an in-depth discussion on Moo Moo Farm. You came here for an in-depth discussion on Yoshi Falls. This one's another oval track, much like Moo Moo Farm, but unlike Moo Moo Farm, there is actually an interesting gimmick this time. You've got these waterfalls scattered throughout with bridges crossing on the outside, and this is the perfect way to create a risk and reward element. The first section has items on the bridge guiding you to the safe path, but you can be a little bit cheeky and go for the dangerous waterfall path. The third one has items coming down the waterfall, but none on the safe path, so you gotta risk it for the items. And the second one, oh boy, the second one, it has no discernible purpose whatsoever. This thing's fucking useless. So not only are the items on the safe path the second waterfall, but the waterfall itself is not only slower than the regular path, but also sets you up for a much worse turn than the regular path. And somehow the converse is true for the third waterfall. The safe path has no purpose, because both the items and the faster route on the waterfall, you're never going to go for the safe path. Honestly, all they needed to do was switch the way the items are on these last two waterfalls. Have them coming down on the second one to give that one actual purpose, and have them on the top on the third one to give the safe path for the general purpose. And boom, the whole problem solved. Well, maybe not the whole problem. Like I said, this one's just another oval, and while that in and of itself is not a bad thing in the slightest, it does hinder it from reaching its full potential, and as such, it gets to sit at the top of D tier. Oh yeah, we're done with D tier now. Starting out the C tier is Choco Mounting, and holy shit, they actually know what chocolate looks like. This one's kind of funny to me, because throughout all my complaining about tracks being wider in this game, this might be the one track that actively benefits from the change. It gives the track some much needed breathing room, because the original one was so cramped, and paired with that game's controls, it made it just actively not fun to play. Here though, I mean, you can't spin out because you lightly bumped into a wall, and that's just lovely. Other than that though, the track layout is pretty much identical. You can still fall down this one part which is kind of funny, the ramp still serves zero purpose, the Maltesers exist. This is the most 5 out of 10 track to ever 5 out of 10. It's just kinda okay, and that's about it. Guys, I'm gonna hold your hand as I tell you this, but Yoshi Circuit is shaped like a Yoshi. And that's all it's ever gonna be. The original track wasn't anything special by any means, but there was at least some charm to it. You had the Yoshi Copter, you could see Daisy Cruiser in the background, there was that one shortcut that everyone loves to gush about, and none of it is present in this remake. And it doesn't even stop there, because there's a bunch of smaller changes, like the fact that the flower beds have been replaced by these green mounds, and the piranha plants at the end are now just the small static ones, that really just make the track feel empty in comparison to the original. And while the core of the track has remained intact, it's gone from feeling like a track who just so happens to be shaped like a Yoshi, to a track that's entire thing is that it's shaped like a Yoshi, and I just cannot justify putting it any higher than this. Of all the Nitro tracks in this game, I feel like DK Pass is easily the most forgettable, and it is easy to see why. There's nothing really to this one outside of Snow Track. And while they definitely do a lot to help with the snow theme, you know, you got the snowmen and the giant snowballs rolling down the hill, these aren't unique to this track, and there's nothing here that stands out as its own. At least with Desert Hills, you have the Mario 3 stuff. Here, it feels like they just made this to tick off a snow track on the roster. And when there's already a much better snow track within the roster, this one just feels that more invalid. Mushroom Bridge gets the award of being the least bastardized of the GameCube tracks, which is kind of funny, seeing as it's easily the one that's had the most changed about it. Like, Luigi Circuit and Baby Park are both just bigger than they were before, and Yoshi Circuit for the most part is just visually inferior. But Mushroom Bridge, man, it's just lost so much sauce from the original. For starters, they removed the pipe at the start that gave you an instant double item, which on paper does make sense, but they could have easily replaced it with one of the item boxes that guarantees you a good item, and it could have worked just as well. And not only that, but the variety in the cars here is non-existent. The Wiggle Bus? Gone. The Mushroom Car? Gone. The Bob-omb Car? Gone. And what do we have to replace these things? Listen, I get that the DS isn't as powerful as the GameCube, but this is honestly just upsetting. As the fact that you can't drive on top of the bridge arches anymore. I know it's such a nothing thing, but if you're gonna get rid of the pipes when you've got them working elsewhere in the game, you could have at least given us this. Remember when I said this was the least bastardized track? Anyway, next up is Shroom Ridge, and if I'm being honest, it could easily swap places with Mushroom Bridge. I feel like most people only remember this one because of being in the booster pass, and while that version is phenomenal, this one's kinda just mid. There's nothing all too special going on with the layout here outside of a couple turns that could have you blindsided by cars if you're not careful. Although there's like fuck all cars here, so that's highly unlikely. Something car themed track. I do like that the last couple turns at the end are over the edge of a cliff to create a sense of difficulty spike. I think that's a nice touch. And the one thing this one has over the remake, there's cars driving both ways down the track. I do kinda wish they'd kept the stationary item boxes to the sidelines like they did in Toad's Turnpike, because as it stands, with how empty the track is in terms of traffic, these little pockets on the outside serve as much of a purpose as they do on Peach Circuit. All in all though, this one's fine. Perfectly serviceable, but nothing all too memorable. Rainbow Road is closing out of C tier, and Jesus Christ, this one is bland. I know I said that DK Pass is the most forgettable track here, but I would be lying if I said this one doesn't give it a run for its money. Literally the only thing anyone remembers this one for is the loop-de-loop in the middle, and while that in and of itself is pretty cool, it's also the only thing the track has going for it. Everything else here is either a boring straight road or it's ripped straight from Double Dash. I mean, like, look at this. Tell me this isn't just a one-to-one copy. Hell, I'd even argue that the bland part's the same here too. Outside of the city down below and the aforementioned loop-de-loop, these two tracks feel pretty much the same to me. As to say, I feel nothing I'm taking the nostalgia goggles off of this one. This is the most boring Rainbow Road since N64's, and I'm tired of pretending it's not. Moving on to the B tier, we have a Resident Beach course, Cheap Cheap Beach, and I gotta say, in terms of beach tracks, this is a good one. I like how much they do to mix up the scenery here. The track's still on a beach for the most part, but you got these little elements of boardwalks and this jungle section, and it really helps to add some variety to the course. I also like the gimmick of the shifting tides. I know it's been used in a couple of other tracks, but I feel like with being able to risk taking the turns tight depending on how low the tide is, it really puts it at its best here. Other than that though, this is pretty much your typical beach experience. You know, you got the crabs, you got the cheap cheaps, you got the music with the one instrument that does the weird sound, and while the track isn't anything too special, it definitely has its charm, and it definitely earns its place in B tier. When looking at the tracks that suffer without a trick system, Wario Stadium is easily the one that suffers the most. The whole thing takes place within this giant motocross stadium, and as you can probably guess, there are jumps everywhere. There are jumps with boosts, jumps without boosts, there's big jumps, there's little jumps, there's even littler jumps. There's that one section with the dash panels going through the mud where if you mess up you get a massive slowdown. You got the few turns where you gotta avoid the fire bars to take the optimal racing line. And by far my favourite part of the track, the unique opening theme that only plays here. And all these things come together to create a track that is just okay. Like I said, this one suffers a lot from the lack of a trick system. I know Bowser Castle 2 and Choco Island have the same thing, but there, at least they're somewhat avoidable. Here though, the entire track is built around the 15 of the bastards, and I can't even trick up them. What's the point of these things if I can't do a funny animation when going off them? And then the thing that everyone and their mother knows, the track shares the same music as Waluigi Pinball, meaning that this one just lives in that one's shadow. You deserve better, Wario Stadium. Hopefully one day you can get a remake that can show the world just how much potential you truly had. And that also doesn't suck. Bowser Castle. Not Bowser's Castle, no. He does not own this one. You can definitely tell. This honestly feels like another track was reskinned to be a Bowser Castle, because there's nothing really here that screams penultimate track, outside of maybe the Thwomps. Obviously the one thing everyone gushes over here is the spinning log, and yeah, they have every right to do so. There's nothing else like this in this series, and it kinda sucks because this is a really cool idea. You gotta keep an eye out for which way it's turning, because if you fall down, you don't just get sent back to the start. No, you gotta go the long way around, which I honestly wish there was more stuff like this. Unfortunately though, that's really all there is to this one. There is another spinning platform in the middle that leads to a shortcut, but with how easy it is to take, the quote-unquote main path is pretty much pointless. And speaking of easy, the Thwomps are honestly just a joke. Like, I genuinely think I got hit more on Bowser Castle 2 than I did here. And much like Bowser Castle 2, the music here is atrocious. There are 2 Bowser Castles in the game, and neither one has a soundtrack that I actually want to listen to. But other than that, this one's just fine. There's literally nothing else to talk about here, and the spinning log carries it hard. Cuba Beach 2 is the only SNES track in this game that isn't complete and utter dog shit. At first glance, this may look like just another circle, and while that is true, the main bulk of the source comes from this part here. You got the slippery water path with the holes in the water to avoid that are pretty easy to avoid, but then there's a mount to the side with an extra item you can snag if able to go through the harder path, and I like that. Ricks and rewards, you know? Unfortunately though, there are a few things holding this one back. Like I said, it is just a circle, and the signature SNES 3-lap bullshit does not help this one in the slightest. Also, the track just looks like shit. I don't know what happened here, but the grey sands, the weird circle grass, and the coloured SNES blocks are just really unappealing to look at. Overall though, this one's a pretty solid track, and I can't wait to see what they do with it in the future. It's gonna be great, right? Right? Kicking off the top 10 is Mario Circuit. I oftentimes see this one be referred to as the best Mario Circuit, and while it definitely is, it kinda had to be. I honestly think this one being in the Star Cup kinda hurts it, because while it's definitely good by Mario Circuit standards, by Star Cup standards, it's honestly kinda forgettable. Getting the obvious out of the way, the Piranha Plants here are the stars of the show. But the fact that a Mario Circuit is the only time we ever see these things is honestly kinda crazy, because they're such an interesting hazard. They shoot fireballs at you that you've got to avoid. That's fun! And even outside of them, there's still a decent amount to enjoy here. You've got the typical Goober shenanigans, there's a pipe tunnel that doesn't serve zero purpose, there's the closest we ever get to Peach's Castle outside of the one track we drive in Peach's Castle, and the overall layout is pretty solid. And that's pretty much how I feel about the track as a whole. It's pretty solid. So yeah, Mario Circuit DS is good, and I'm tired of pretending it's not. Moving on to the A tier, we have Luigi's Mansion. And this is another one of those tracks that's based on different games of the Mario series, and is of course based on the beloved Mario Bros. Spin-off, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. On a real though, they really nailed the atmosphere for this one. This place just feels eerily depressing, and I love it. The layout here is okay. You go through the mansion before entering the graveyard and eventually heading out back to the forest, which is surprisingly the most interesting part of the track itself. Obviously you've got the mud, which I'm now realizing is a pain in the ass to drive through, and the most notable part is the walking trees, which I like the walking trees. Yeah. Another couple things I like are the ghosts that only appear during the graveyard section, and the swinging chandeliers throughout the mansion. Which, honestly, my only real complaint is that we're not in said mansion long enough. We're in and out both within 10 seconds, and there's nothing really happening outside of a couple 90-degree turns. But in fairness, it is a Mushroom Cup track, so it does get away with it, and it is still an amazing track overall. I just wish we'd gotten a bit more. Next up is Peach Gardens. I love Peach Gardens, but that goes without saying because we all love Peach Gardens. This is honestly such a standout track in terms of special cups. Usually they try to go for more grand or bombastic or just difficult tracks, but here they made one that was just kinda relaxing, and I love it. The hedge mage here is such a good diversion from the norm. Usually you'd want to avoid the chain jumps, but with the items trailing behind them, you'd actually want to go towards them. And the hedges being so low really help with that, because if they were just regular hazards, it wouldn't be nearly as interesting. And it isn't just the hedge maze I like, because there's another chain jump at the start that's circling this Mario Tippy area. There's another hedge maze type thing that kinda reminds me of the one Mario Party DS minigame. There's a few Monty moles at the end, and the music is just so good. This is just a good track, man. There's no other way of saying it. It is by far the best of this game's special cup offerings. Frappe Snowland. I'm well aware that this is my bias talking here, but I love winter, and I am not ashamed to admit that this is kind of the only reason I like this track. The whole clear, dark skies with light snow over the endless sea of white, it just does something to me, man, and the same goes for the music. I know it is basic as all hell, but it just sounds so nice. I don't know how else to put it. Obviously the layout isn't anything interesting in the slightest. Pretty much the only thing of note is the giant field of snowmen right before the walls start closing in. And honestly, that's my one critique I have about the track, is that the giant snowman Mario ice sculpture thing doesn't have an item box on the outside, and that is a massive nitpick. I will say I do kinda wish they'd held off on this one for a little bit, because could you imagine how cute this bit here would be if it got given the Choco Mountain treatment? Or not. But like I said, those are just some major nitpicks for a track that I just adore, and they cannot hamper my enjoyment of it in the slightest. And rounding out the A tier is Game Boy Luigi Circuit, because GameCube Luigi Circuit just wasn't enough. Just by looking at the name, I'm sure this one sounds like yet another boring basic circuit track, but it might just be the most ambitious one yet. Because it's raining. This might not seem like anything special nowadays, especially with how worlds change things, but back then this was some pretty groundbreaking stuff. And it isn't just for show either, there's a bunch of puddles throughout the track to avoid, including one with an item box right in front of it for those daring enough. And pair that with the abundance of U-turns and the fact that it's on an airfield of all things, and we have what is quite possibly the greatest circuit course in the entire series. Kicking off not only the top 5 but also the S tier, we have the best retro track in the game, Sky Garden. I love the theming of this one, you know, look at the blue road and the yellow clouds with all the vines in the background. It's just gorgeous, and surprisingly, the layout is pretty solid. It being a flat retro DS course, you may not expect much, but there's a solid amount of tight turns, a fair few high-risk shortcuts, which aren't as insane as they were on Super Circuit, but let's be real, nothing's ever topping them things. But bigger than all of that, we have the single most useful jump in any Mario Kart course. Crazy. I honestly don't think there's any other word that could best describe this one. It's just fantastic.
Say that again?
Coming in just shy of our top 3 is Waluigi Pinball, and much like Baby Park, it seems to be another one of the more divisive tracks in the series. But rather than Baby Park's It's Boring versus It's Funny debate, people are just trying to be different and say that this one sucks, when in actuality it is just one of the best tracks in the franchise. The whole pinball idea was such a unique concept, and they pulled it off flawlessly. Every single part about this track really helps make you feel like a pinball. You get launched to the top like a pinball, you race down the track with more pinballs, and you get to the actual pinball table section with the bumpers and the flippers and the even more fucking pinballs. And it's pretty good. And in case you weren't already sold on the pinball aesthetic, they also went in and changed all the sound effects for like the lap count, the item roulette, your placement, and they even added one for when you guttable, which honestly might just be my favourite of the bunch. And that'd be a cardinal sin if I didn't mention the music here. I know Wario Stadium has it too, but let's be real. This is Waluigi's track. Take notes, Pinball Highway. This is how you do a pinball track right. probably going to be one of the easiest S tiers in the entire series, and anyone who says otherwise is just trying to be different. Coming in third place, we have Airship Fortress. This is another one of the tracks that's based on a Mario level, but rather than being based on a specific location, it's rather a general level theme, this time being airships. And my god, they went all in on this one. They do not give you any breathing room here. Literally every moment on the track there's something different going on. You start with the bullet bills getting shot at you before going to the airship with the rocky wrenches to avoid, then you go into a basement with boxes and fire bars, then you get shot out of a cannon into a tower for a downward spiral, and just for good measure, there's a hole in the floor. Like I said, they went hard on this one, more so than they had any need to do so. It is just a phenomenal track, and yet, it still barely managed to crack the top 3. Coming in second place, just narrowly missing out on the top spot, is Tick Tock Clock. Obviously themed around the Mario 64 stage with the same name, the clock theme really lends itself well here. The whole thing's filled to the brim with moving parts, most notably the 4 back-to-back cogs in the middle of the track you gotta weave in and out of to maintain your speed. There's also another pair of cogs right at the end, there's a massive clock face with giant clock hands to avoid, there's a swinging pendulum, and there's another clock face near the end, which admittedly is a bit on the weaker side. The hands are supposed to alternate between blocking the shorter and longer path, but with how much time it spends on the outside, it's almost never an issue. But that is one massive nitpick in an ocean of praise. This one is damn near perfect. And yet, it's still not the best, because that honor goes to Delfino Square. Now, I'm gonna be honest here, when compared to the last 3 tracks on an objective level, like fuck does this one belong up here. It is such a safe and simple track in comparison, but I honestly think that's why I like it so much more. Based on Mario Sunshine's Ao Delfino, this one's going for more of a simplistic town/harbour theme, and it's just beautiful, man. There's the Pianta statue at the town square, all the thin alleyways, you can jump down to the pier to get an extra item, there's the market section with a shortcut you can take through an even narrower alleyway, and of course, the drawbridge. London Loop ain't got shit on this bad boy. But of course, none of that matters if the music sucks ass, and thankfully, this track's just perfect to me. This is the track I think of when I think Mario Kart, and I don't think there's going to be anything that comes close anytime soon. But yeah, that's Mario Kart DS. Definitely not as great as I thought it was from a track perspective, but it's still a solid enough experience. If you have any thoughts on the list, please sure to let me know in the comments, and if you have a list of your own that you want to share, be sure to let me know as well, so I can tell you how wrong you are. But yeah, that's all for now. If you want to see any more of my correct opinions, be sure to click here, and until next time, figure 8 circuit for Mario Kart World. Okay, bye!